So hello, my name is Juno Losita, and your name is?
Jon Dexter. I'm the creator
Nice.
of sorry, I stepped on you. I'm the creator of the new Kickstarter that's out right now called Space Cruise in Issue One. I'm also the creator of the comics that you see behind you, Alpha Dogs and Dexter Detective.
Awesome. Very excited to be meeting with you today. Can you tell me a little bit about your comics or about yourself?
Yeah, so I've been creating comics since 2021 with on Kickstarter. I actually created Space Cruiser originally back in 2012, but wasn't able to finish it. Financially, it was tight. So it's great that I've been able to have some success with my other series, Alpha Dogs and Dexter Detective, that I'm able to kind of pick this up now and continue on with this series. It's a great comic. You can check out the Kickstarter. The links in the private chat. Yeah, if you type in Space Cruising Issue One or Jon Dexter, you'll be taken to the Kickstarter. There's a great trailer there, a lot of really cool covers, and some really fun rewards. You can also get my other comics, Dexter Detective and Alpha Dogs. This is my other two series. There's 4 issues of that out right now, Alpha Dogs, and 3 issues currently of my Dexter Detective. Alpha Dogs is about this dog that has the ability to heal from any wound. He's smart enough to understand human speech. He has a heightened strength. Him and his owner are on the run for mercenaries that are attempting to kidnap him to possess his powers. This is the graphic novel you can actually get on the Kickstarter that's on currently for Space Cruise. And as you can see, the art is phenomenal. Stone Tower Studios does the art. And there's a lot of big happenings coming down the pipe for Alpha Dogs, which I can't really talk about now, but it's going to be pretty exciting. Then my other series, Dexter Detective, if you like supernatural crime mystery, comic books or stories, and you'd really enjoy that. It's a terrific series as well, and you can get that on the Space Cruise and Kickstarter. So, just to people who are familiar with Space Cruise, because this is issue one, this is the debut issue. You can go to Kickstarter and watch the trailer, which is great. Or you can just hear my spiel. So Space Cruising is about this alien, a human, and this android that kind of are friends that go along trying to find earthling artifacts to sell. They're just trying to make a quick buck. What's happened is light years away and in the far future, Earth is no longer sustainable for human life. So humans have to go to this distant galaxy where the two planets that are later dubbed Washington and Olympus, where humans can live. The only problem with that is aliens live on those planets and they don't like humans kind of pushing their laws and their beliefs. So they end up going to war, and there's this huge war that happens. And that's the world building that we live in for this comic book series. There's a lot of tension between humans and aliens. And here's this trio of friends that get together. This guy who's a human, he's a Bushido warrior, he's an enhanced human. And he meets this alien who loves American culture, pop culture, which most of the aliens do. It's kind of a take on foreigners that when they used to come over here, they didn't really get along with American society, but they love the culture. And everybody, is a big fan of, pop culture. Everybody is. So you've got aliens wearing, Civil War outfits or wearing space cadet outfits or Daniel Boone hats. In this story, Ace, the pilot, he wears a cowboy hat, a World War II bomber jacket, and an I Shot JR t-shirt. And then we have Phobos, is the alien who's an android who's 300 years old. He's an obsolete android, but has emotions that installed to him that are human. So he has a lot of knowledge to share, but of course, like most people, how they treat the elderly, broke down and dumb or, not really worth much, but have a lot of knowledge. So it's got a lot of comedy in it. It's kind of like Spaceballs and Star Wars sort of mixed in.
And how much research would you say that you put into creating this comics?
Not too much. It's this one is a sci-fi, so it's mostly just all imagination. Like most of my work, there's not much research that goes into anything I do really. With my Dime Store Detective, I did do a little research because that one takes place during the 80s, and then it goes back and forth. So during Prohibition and the Dixie Mafia, this gang that actually existed back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
That's awesome. And can you tell us a bit about what inspired you to become a comic book writer?
Probably Star Wars, like any kid that's in their 40s nowadays. We went to the movie theater and Star Wars kind of blew everybody away, and it was really I would guess that just about half of anybody that's in my age group that's a writer, creator, probably Star Wars, had the biggest influence, I would guess. And then when I became a teenager, the X-Men became a huge influence on me. The X-Men cartoon from the 90s that really opened up my love for comic books and started me on this path of creating stories for comics. It's a real enjoyable, well, right now pastime. Hopefully one day it'll be my full-time job. We'll see.
I love that. I definitely know how big Star Wars is.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's still big.
just yeah, it definitely is. What would you say has been your favorite part about creating comics?
Seeing your stories somewhat come to life, as a matter of speaking. I mean, it's two-dimensional, of course, but really just seeing your work, fleshed out in panels that someone else has drawn is one of the greatest accomplishments that I've ever had. One of my top greatest moments of my life is when I first opened up the box that had my first comic in it. It's kind of indescribable, something that you've worked so hard on, to spend a lot of money on, and time and energy to be in a floppy comic book. Some people might not think it's such a great accomplishment. To me, it's kind of it's all I ever wanted to do, really.
And what would you say is the biggest challenge of being a comic book writer?
The money, definitely. Trying to get the funds to create the comic books. That's definitely the by far the toughest aspect of it is just coming up with the funds, because creating comics is not cheap. And especially when you're first starting out and you're doing it on your own, that's definitely, I think, probably everybody that creates comics will tell you that same answer.
Yeah, I've heard that answer from a lot of people. Definitely
Yeah.
money seems to be an obstacle. Um, have you always wanted to be a comic book writer, or was there something else that you were going forward and then you just found your dream in comic book writing?
Yeah, screenwriting, actually. That was my passion for most of my life, was screenwriting. I wanted to be a screenwriter and write movies. That was basically what I wanted to do. And then I kind of fell in love with comic books as I got into my teens, and the story that I had for Alpha Dogs wouldn't really lend itself to a movie. It was definitely a comic book vibe to it. I had done a comic book before, Space Cruising, um, but yeah, screenwriting was my first passion for most of my life, and then I transitioned to comic books. When you write comic books, you're the director. To a certain extent, it's kind of a shared responsibility with the artist. You're both kind of directing it, but you have much more control of your work as opposed to writing a screenplay.
I have some background in screenwriting. I absolutely love
Oh,
it,
cool.
so I can definitely
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
Um,
Screenwriting's great, but then you kind of, when you screenwrite, you're just kind of writing a blueprint, and plus it's much more difficult to. I actually am a two-time. I don't know if you've heard of the Nicole Fellowship. It's put on by the Academy Awards. They put on a fellowship, and every year they pick five scripts that um, enter the fellowship, and hope there's been movies made. Well, my one of my screenplays, called The Weeping Trees, was a two-time Nicole Fellowship semifinalist. So that meant I was in the top 180 out of 7,300 scripts, and so that was kind of pretty cool. That was my first, I would say, big accomplishment, was that. and I thought I was going to get a movie made, and you know, it went with 99.9% of the screenplays down the toilet. So,
What do you think is the biggest misconception about writing comic books?
um, boy, I don't know. To be quite honest, the biggest misconception. Um, boy, I don't know. I don't know what any misconceptions there would be with creating comic books. I'm not really in the community per se. In other words, I don't go to forums and talk about stuff like that. I just like creating comic books. So I don't know what a misconception of comic book creating would be. I guess that it's not as expensive as people realize. I think that probably is a misconception. Maybe that. Yeah, I honestly I couldn't tell you.
That's all right. Um, do you have any tools you enjoy using?
Just my imagination. That's my only tool.
And do you think you can walk us through a day of you creating comics?
A day of creating comics. Well, it all kind of depends. I have a day job, so I don't get to write every day. I'd say typically if I have to myself, I would wake up, um, get my coffee, and then start working on the script. And usually it's kind of a mad rush of 6 hours, not even realizing times went by, and in writing your issue, and then go back. And writing is really about rewriting. There's it's just continually rewriting and rewriting. There's a saying that goes, a script is never finished, it's just abandoned, which is true, because you can always make it, probably always make it better. There's never been a perfect script, I suppose. I don't know.
How do you develop your characters in your comic book?
Characters usually an amalgamation of a few characters or situations where you know you have you have the idea for the comic book, and you have to or I should say, meld the character around the situation, and then build that character. For me, usually the story comes first, and then the characters to help emphasize whatever it is you're trying to do. But usually it's every character is a little bit of yourself. Every character. So whatever issues you have, or insecurities or dreams or goals or whatever, usually those work into your character. And then what I probably take a couple other people I know, or um, I guess the characters of a movie, I suppose, to help hone and form that person. Um, that's what I would usually, that's what works for me. I'm trying to get a good example, but well, for instance, the main character dog in Alpha Dogs is modeled after my dog, because he was a very like most dogs, very loyal, and he would very protective, and like hopefully like somewhat like me, a very loyal person too. So that's kind of how I formed that character. And then you know when minor characters, you're basically just having to try to give them emphasis and to play off the main character.
That's great. And do you ever experience creative blocks, like writing
I
blocks?
knew you were gonna. I knew that question was coming. um, yeah, I guess so. But usually it's usually if you're feeling blue, if you're feeling down, then I probably that happens. If you're frustrated about something going on with your comics or real life, those are the only times that I really have creative blocks. But usually I don't. I don't usually only write if I'm in the mood. So yeah, I'm gonna have a creative block because I'm in the mood to write. That's when I write. I don't write every day like most people, which I probably should, but I have a day job, so I don't get to write as much as I'd like to. Plus, you should read it as much as you write. So I try to hone up on whatever. And I try to read different comic books. I just read, I believe it's pronounced Perceptualist. Have you heard that? It's about the Iranian girl, a true story. Um, when the Ayatollah took over. Anyway, it's a really good comic. So, if I was to give advice for anybody, I'd say diversify and read everything, whether it's comic books, or whatever it is you're into.
Have you ever received surprising feedback on your comics?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, all the time I'm always surprised. I mean, I'm more surprised if somebody doesn't like it. I just assume someone's gonna like it. So if someone doesn't like it, that's probably when I'm actually surprised and obviously frustrated. Whether it's their fault, my fault. But yeah, I've yeah, if someone says something they like what I'm doing, then I'm really not that surprised because I mean, you should think that you're a terrific writer and what you're writing is phenomenal. So the only time I'm ever surprised if somebody says they don't like it, I'm more disappointed than surprised. But yeah, that's what I would say.
That makes sense. And how do you handle that criticism?
You just kind of got to learn from it. Everybody's, has an opinion, and you just kind of got to decipher it and see if there's legitimacy into what they're saying, and try to work on it and see what you perhaps did wrong, or hopefully, if you're lucky, maybe they just, no one's gonna like everything you do. That there's people that don't like Star Wars, so you just got to take it. If they have legitimate points, then you should always take that in and try to grow as a writer and figure out what you did wrong. I mean, I definitely wish I could go back on certain things and change, but it's already out there. So,
And what do you think makes a comic book visually engaging?
a good artist, definitely. I mean, that's a good artist. That you have to have a good artist. The art is what brings people in, and the writing is what keeps them there. So, you have to have good art to just get them in the door because you can be a terrific writer, but if the art sucks, then no one's going to read it. I don't think. I don't. Unless it's a writer that I know is really great, even though I don't like the artist. There was a comic book, now I'm blanking on it, that it was very blocky. But Alan Moore recommended it. It was Depression era comic book. I can't remember what it's called, but it was such a great story that I didn't care that the art wasn't very good.
Which one of your characters from any of your comic books do you feel you relate to the most?
I mean, all of them, honestly. I mean, all of my characters are always, because when you write, it's always a little bit of a piece of you, a little bit of a piece of your personality. Um, but the one I relate to the most, I don't know. None of them None of them are kind of like, oh, that's me. None of them really like that. I wish some of them were, but boy, off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody that I say, oh, that is me. I can't really think of anybody but they're all a little bit of me, a little bit of a piece of my personality.
Do you have a favorite character, maybe one that you really enjoyed writing?
Space Cruising Ace, the pilot Ace, who's this alien who loves pop culture. He's got the cowboy hat, World War II bomber jacket. He's a comedic sidekick, comedic character, and um, I love the challenge of writing comedy. There's not a lot of comics that do comedy, and when I write something, I want to make sure I'm writing something to the best of my knowledge no one else has done. So when I wrote him, I really enjoyed it because he's just a fun character. He's a really fun character, and if people read it, if you go to the Kickstarter and watch the trailer for Space Cruising issue 1, I think you'll agree that he's a very unique character, and he's a lot of fun character. So Ace would be definitely one of my favorites. And of course, some of the characters from Alpha Dogs I really enjoy. Cyrus, he's an old grumpy dog that's jaded. I like characters that are very unique that I create. So those would be probably my favorites.
Did you have a character that might have been a bit challenging to write?
Um, a girl character. Girl characters are challenging for me. I'm a guy, so I know this is shock, but yeah, I'm a guy. But probably the love interest in Dexter Detective, the female. She's my biggest character female of any of my comic books. So, I don't know anything about women, so it was probably the biggest challenge for me. But I think it came out pretty cool.
I understand that. When I'm writing, I have a hard time writing male characters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can't relate. I mean, that's why men and women fight all the time. We don't relate. So,
What do you think is unique about your comic books?
um, I don't think you're gonna find anything on the shelf that's like mine, and I can tell you that with sincere honesty. And I think most people that will read anything I've written will tell you the same thing. You're not going to find another thing, comic book like mine on the shelf. Alpha Dogs is about these dogs that talk to each other, but it's this very serious tone. Excuse me, story. Dime Detective is a supernatural crime mystery noir. I would really challenge too many people to find a supernatural crime mystery noir comic book out there. And this new one, Space Cruise, and you have this world building where you have aliens and humans living together in this universe that really don't get along. It's kind of flip side where we think of aliens as this advanced species. Well, in my story, they're the total opposite. It's the humans that are the advanced species, and they have kind of bullied their way into their universe and kind of taken control. And you have these all these aliens that wear you know get-ups from throughout human history, like Civil War, Revolutionary, cowboys. So I think it's Space Cruising is a very unique comic book, and if people just give it a chance, I think they'll agree that it's a lot of fun.
That sounds very exciting, and it does sound very fun too.
Yeah, it's fun. It's an all age comic book. There isn't swearing. And, and when I say all ages, I mean it's a kid book. It's all ages can enjoy it, and they honestly will. Like I said, if people just check out the trailer, the covers are fantastic. We've got some homage covers, Amazing Fantasy 15. We've got the main cover. We've got the Star Wars issue 1 comic book homage. And like I said, the trailer, if the trailer doesn't get your attention, then I'm kind of out of ideas because the trailer is really fun and gives you a good idea of what's in store for you.
I loved the trailer. It's very
Thank you.
entertaining to watch.
I hope so. And you can watch, and on this campaign, you can get all of my comic books. So you can go to the Kickstarter, um, click on my name, Jon Dexter, and watch the trailers for my other series. And the trailers for those series are fantastic too. And they give you a good idea. So if any of my comics are interesting to you, then you can get them all on this campaign.
Do you have any themes that you find yourself returning to in your work?
Um, Probably loyalty would be one. And I guess just fighting the good fight because, I create comic books. So you've got to be, have that mentality of just keep pushing on and pushing on, even though there's been many, many times that I people have told me just to stop, to give up, but I didn't. And so I think that's one of the themes I've always returned to is never to give up on your dream because I'm, in my late 40s now. And, I've been trying to make it for most of my life. And just now things are actually starting to happen for me. So that would be my theme of my life really is to keep at it.
What has been the most valuable lesson you've learned in this career?
To always be learning, never be the smartest person in the room, and to stay humble, I think would be would be some advice I could give, to always be, trying to learn from others and trying to grow your audience as much as you can, because it's tough. It's it's a very tough business to get into, and most people you know say don't even try, because it's just a lot of frustration. But if you still, if it's what you love, then keep at it.
How do you stay motivated during your long projects?
How I stay motivated, I guess knowing that there's an end game in sight, that I can hold one of these. That's the camera. Hold one of these. That's my motivation. I know that it will be in print, and I just got to keep at it. So it's just such a thrill to see your work in print, that's really all the motivation I need.
That's awesome. And how do you come up with ideas for new stories?
I really don't really think about it. It just kind of comes to me. It'll probably be one idea, a kernel of an idea, then a kernel of another, and then it just grows. With Dime Store Detective, I had written a detective supernatural story like over 10, about 7 years ago, and it just wasn't good enough yet. And so it just sat. And then I had heard about the Dixie Mafia, who, were basically the New York Mafia, but of the South, real people. And I thought, wow, that's amazing that there are these hitmen, these mobsters, these drug runners in, Alabama, Georgia, and no one's ever told their story. So I had come up with something, and then I had included the other half of the story that I was missing, and put that together. So usually it's a bunch of kernels of the stories, and they just might sit there and permeate, and then eventually something will come along to jog that. But yeah, I don't think I've ever just sat down and was like, man, I got to come up with something.
Having great imagination is awesome, though.
Yeah, exactly. When I was a little kid, I thought everybody pretended their room was a movie studio, and I would create movies and TV programs and plots and stuff, and I just assumed everybody did that, and I guess they didn't.
How do you collaborate with others, like artists, letters, like all those different type of people?
Yeah, well, mostly the collaboration comes to just the artist, the guy that's doing the drawing, the inking. You write the script, and you kind of give a outline, and hopefully they come up with something better than what you came up with. And I try to stay out of it when it comes to what they come up with, because like I said, the script is a blueprint. Unless it's something really important that has to be showcased, then I usually kind of try to stay out of it, because they have the blueprint. And then because creating a comic book is a collaboration. You want it to be a collaboration. You don't want to pigeonhole it. It's just your vision, because then you only get one side, and especially if they're artists, then obviously they're very creative themselves. So I try to give them as free reign as I can.
And do you use social media at all to help promote your work?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook. If you type in Jon Dexter, I hopefully will come up towards the top. I'm on Instagram at alpha_dogs_comic, and I'm on Twitter or X at real alpha dogs. So you can give me a follow and see all the pages and keep updated on what I'm doing. I've got my Dime Store Detective issue 4 is going to be coming out later on this summer, and then Alpha Dogs issue 5 will be out in 2025 probably.
What do you think of the future of comic books?
Well, obviously, I'm sure, like anybody else, AI is definitely an issue, I think, for a lot of artists. And nowadays they can actually plug in scripts too. So it might be an unstoppable force with AI for artists, but hopefully not. They're able to control it. But unfortunately, I'm afraid that a big company is going to do it, like DC, and then Marvel's going to follow suit because you don't have to pay the artist. So I think that's definitely a possibility. I hope not. But I think independent comics are only going to get bigger because Hollywood is very much seems to be controlled with agendas, and when you are like me and like a lot of people that are independent comic don't have some big corporation breathing down your neck, you can create stories that are free of politics or whatever agenda they're trying to come across, and people do gravitate towards that. People don't want to be told, what to think. People want to just sit back and turn their brain off, enjoy a story.
I agree. And now we're down to our last two questions.
Okay.
So the first one, do you have any tips for aspiring comic book writers?
Don't do it. It's tough. It's very tough. But if that doesn't make a difference to you, then go for it. My tip would be expanding your mailing list. I wish I would have done that when I first started. You want to have a mailing list. You want to get as many emails as you can. You want to expand your social media. I mean, you need to have at least 10,000 followers and friends, I would say. I don't think I have that many, actually. I think I have 2, 4, 6, 8. I have around 8 to 9. So, you want to have, I guess I should say at least 6,000 people, because it's all a numbers game. You send out 1,000 emails, you're going to get 10 people that respond. So it's all a numbers game, getting as many people as you can, because you're only going to get about 1 to 2% of those people to actually respond.
That is great advice, and I completely agree with all of that. And now my last question is, where can we find your comic books?
On Kickstarter right now, unless you live in Michigan, then I'm in a bunch of comic stores in Michigan. That's where I live. But on Kickstarter, I have a live campaign. There's 29, 28 days left. We're just over 50% funded. I really could use a boost. We got plenty of time though, but yeah, you can go to Kickstarter, type in Jon Dexter, type in Space Cruise, and type in Alpha Dogs, and you can get taken to the campaign for Space Cruise in issue 1. If you back it today, no money comes out until after the campaign ends on July 11th. So even if you don't have money right now, it doesn't matter, because they don't take out any money until after the campaign ends. So it's a fun comic. It's really enjoyable, and I can just about guarantee if you read it, you're gonna like it, because it's free of any mumbo jumbo, or I can't believe I just said mumbo jumbo. It's a fun comic that people will really enjoy. You'll really come to know these characters, this trio of friends, and I think they're very relatable. The main character breaks the fourth wall, talks to you, and explains this world and what's going on. And there's a lot of comedy in it, a lot of adventure, and who doesn't love comedy and adventure?
Well, thank you so much for meeting with me today, and thank you everyone who's watching live. I really appreciate you coming on.
I thank you for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time to let me talk about my comics.
No problem. And have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.